Welcome to the Champions Circle. It's truly an honor to be here today. On behalf of the Champions Circle, I want to thank Liga de Justicia Abogados and the Liga de Justicia Foundation for allowing us to bring great stories to you, to allow us to highlight amazing individuals that are making a difference in the world, that are change agents, that are bringing some sand to the beach, to make sure that it is a better place than how they found it. One of the great things that I've been able to experience while doing this podcast is reaching out to friends, reaching out to older friends, friends from the past, reaching out to new friends, and allowing them to tell their stories about where they come from, what their life experience was, so that other people can be inspired. Other people can learn that their journey is very similar. Someone like them has made it. They can visualize, and they can be inspired to do great things because it's within each and every one of us. I have a pleasure, a distinct pleasure today. An old friend, and I don't mean old by being old, but I mean a friend. Though. Yeah, well, you may be, but a friend who I've known for many, many years, who has inspired me in so many ways. He doesn't even realize how much. A person who has made a difference in the community, in civil rights, a person who has, kind of forged his own way and yet reached back to help others. So I want to thank my friend, Jose Perez, for being with us today.
Thank you, Mark. My pleasure for joining you on the Champions Circle. And thank you for allowing me to tell my story and sharing it with others so that hopefully others will follow our path.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I want. So I don't want to talk. I want you to do all the talking. So let's get started. Talk to our audience, those watching this podcast. Talk to them and tell them, where were you born? What background you are? What your childhood was like. Let's start at the beginning.
Okay, so I always open up and I do a fair share of public speaking to students, colleges, high school, colleges, law school, and I always say I am the proud son of immigrants. I am first gen, born and raised in this country. My mom came as a child after the Second World War from the Dominican Republic, right, with mi abuela, mm-hmm, and my aunt, and my dad era campesino. He was a farmer from the Galicia region of Spain. So he also came after the Second World War as a teenager, joining his dad, who was then here, economic opportunity, the ability to seek employment, get jobs. So there you have the history in the 1950s, a gallego from España meeting joven dominicana at what was like the Latin social scene. Casa Galicia, mm-hmm, was where there were clubs and dances, and they met. Love took part. Boom. They got married a year later. Actually, 9 months later, I popped out. So I think it's fair to say I was a honeymoon baby.
Right.
And at that point, so when I first grew up, we lived in Washington Heights. Right. And it isn't the Washington Heights when you think today, like it's a Dominican enclave. It's a Dominican city. Washington Heights in the 60s was, Upper Washington Heights Inwood was Español. Mm-hmm. Gallegos and Español. And that's my dad lived there because that's where all the Españoles.
I didn't know that.
Right. And so back then, old time there, Wadsworth Avenue in the 170s there. So, but in the 60s, Dad, like any other hardworking immigrant, wanted to buy a house, wanted to have a front yard, backyard. So he bought a house in Jackson Heights in Queens. So going from Washington Heights to Jackson Heights in the 60s. That was the suburbs in the 60s, right? Not Long Island out here, right, but like in Queens. And so actually, most of my childhood was spent growing up in Jackson Heights. Mm-hmm. Again, Jackson Heights was very different then. I grew up with, most of my friends were Italian, German, Irish. That was the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. There were few Latinos. I had some few friends from Colombia, South America, but we were mixed. Like our crew was, what did we as young kids did? Like we played sports, basketball, baseball, football. That's what we did. I grew up in Queens. I went to Catholic schools. My parents, my mom especially.
All boys, correct?
No, that was high school.
Oh, high school was
grammar
all
school was
boys.
Corpus Christi and Woodside, but like again, because the better, education, the mentality that you need to go to private school or Catholic school. So we went to Catholic school. Corpus Christi. I went to Monsignor McClancy. That was again an all boys Catholic high school. Had to wear a jacket and tie, clean shaven. There got a great academic education. I admit that, even though it was somewhat crazy, again, being a rebellious teen and having strict disciplinarian. The school was run by the Brothers of the Sacred Heart, so they were very strict. But, it was what it was. I got an education, and from there to St. John's.
Okay. But biculturally, in your home, now you're coming from parents, right? European, Spaniard, right? And also Dominican. What kind of cultural nuances did you have in your home and in your upbringing?
Family and culture was critically important, a daily component. Family, my mom, the Dominican side of the family, like my maternal grandmother and my mom's sisters and brothers, most of them all ended up living in Queens or Long Island. So holidays always was a family get together. And what do Dominicans, like many Latin Americans, what do? We like, I don't want to say party, but like celebrate, right? We like to eat good food, arroz con habichuela, right? Sure. Food, music, merengue, salsa, and that's the thing. My friends growing up always used to love. We hosted Christmas Eve and Christmas at our house in Jackson Heights, and my friends would always come on because they thought my family was crazy. Like all these people getting, we eat, we drink, we dance, and we celebrated life. Right. I mean, so that was key. My father's side, I had some relatives on the Espanol side. They were more reserved, quiet, but and they lived still in Washington Heights, and then they ended up moving. The suburbs they moved to was Bayside, nicer area there. But so it was, but culture was always Latin music. I mean, I grew up with Celia y Johnny Pacheco, salsa, Fania All Stars. Right. That was like staple. Merengue, all the old. I'm trying to think. Well, not so young, but Wilfredo Vargas and places like that. So that was it. Family culture. I grew up mainly speaking English initially because my mom did I think what many immigrants think, I want my kids to learn English, speak English. So I didn't take Spanish until actually formal Spanish grammar until I went to high school. Right. And so hablo, I can speak Spanish, but I have people always think I'm Puerto Rican, and I say no because I hung out with friends who were Puerto Rican. I speak like a New Yorker Puerto Rican in New York. Right. Okay? But that, I can converse, I can read and write, but I have a younger sister, so my mom learned from my experience, and I said this is the one thing my mom messed up on, is that they didn't put me in Spanish right away, except when I was with my grandmother. My grandmother had to speak Spanish. My sister, they put her in Spanish school from day one, so ella habla español perfecto, like con acento como castellano. Right. Like that. So she really speaks perfect, fluent Spanish. Right. So that was, but small quibble. I think everything else turned out pretty good.
How about intolerance? Did you find any, in the community, was there any intolerance? Any
there was some
cultural challenges?
Yeah, in grammar school, again, a school that we had. I mean, it was pretty mixed. My friends who and it was the block that we lived in. So my two best friends were Italian growing up. That was my crew. So when I got into fights or disagreements with other kids, or
they
I got
had your back.
And they would use the spick word or something. I got into sometimes this, and I held my own. And then when others got involved, my best friends had my back. Right. To them, my name, Jose, or I was called my best friend's Joe. Right. Jose, man, you ain't messing with my boy. Right. And that's what it was. But there was some of that. But again, I think we were too young. Right. In high school, there was some of that. Again, the racism there. I had a crew. I mean, I hung out with some of the Latino kids at high school. I also hung out with the kids in my neighborhood because that was my home crew. So
okay, all right. So you get towards the end of your high school years. Did you know you wanted to go to college? Did you have aspirations of going to undergrad and maybe even grad school? And what drove that? Yeah,
I did. I knew I was going to college. I mean, my mom had stress education. I was a good student. I was an A student. I was at the top 10, 20% at McClancy High School. My mom was, I think I take after my mom. was a really good student. She graduated in El Barrio, Julia Richmond High School.
Oh yeah, I know Julia Richmond.
But in her day, the 50s, it wasn't assumed young, particularly Latin or Dominican women, not go to college. She went to work with her sister to help support the family because she had all the younger siblings and cousins. So my mom is the one who should have really gone to college. So I say that my mom made sure that I had that opportunity. And again, so I knew I was going to college, but I didn't have a clue. I took a pre-law class in high school, which I think piqued my first interest. And it was a typical intro business law, but I liked the subject.
Right.
The other thing I will say, and this is a part I took from my dad has always been I call a workaholic. I mean, he was always He was a banquet waiter, was part of a union, worked in the big hotels, but was to work, right? And so I've been working since I was in high school, part-time, earning my keep, helping out at home. I wanted spending money in my pocket. I had to earn it. And so I did that. But so I knew I was going to go to college. The thing was figuring it out. I started out as I think I went from accounting. I realized math and numbers, not me. Became a business major. Then I realized I was going to do pre-law because I had an inkling, but they said you don't really need to major pre-law. You
Correct.
can, and this is something folks should know, you don't have to major in law. You
Right.
can major in just about anything.
Correct.
There are traditional pre-law majors like government or philosophy, but I majored in business, and I took a number of law classes, and I really, and again, I had some sidetracks in college. I went to an all-boys Catholic high school, so it was very strict. You go to college, then all of a sudden, you don't have to go to class. You don't have to. You can hang out. There's a bar. Well, it's called the Ratskeller on campus.
Right.
You could go to Ratskeller at 12 o'clock. There was a bar off
And
campus.
there are girls around.
Well, that too. That was part and parcel, right? And so, that was so the first year and a half, I admit I ran around, partied, grades suffered a little bit. I did have a partial scholarship to St. John's. I lost it because my grades dropped. I didn't meet the 3.5. So I struggled, but then I got serious, and again, I had an epiphany. What do I want to do? I don't want to work like my dad, blue collar, struggle. Work. My dad worked like a dog, and he was to provide for his family.
Right.
He bought a house. My dad ended up buying 2 houses. He went out and bought a house back in Spain so he could go back there. So my dad did pretty well for a guy with a 3rd grade education, but he instilled that value in me.
Work
so
out.
I realized. Law school. That's something I want to do. And again, I was thinking business, corporate law, took the LSAT, did very well. And so, applied law school. Being at St. John's University, they had the law school was right there. I applied to a number of schools, but I was growing up in Queens. I knew the St. John's campus, and it was a great law school, had a great reputation. So, and I got partial scholarship and financial aid again.
So St. John's, was that for undergrad? Was that the no-brainer kind of decision for you?
Yeah, no. I mean, at one point, I think I was thinking Fordham. But Fordham,
My alma mater.
Okay, Fordham, but I lived in Queens, so Fordham was in the Bronx.
Right.
Mom was it was the same thing. Even for high school, I was thinking, I don't want to go to I want to go to a co-ed school like Mater Christi or St. Francis. McClancy, we live right down the block from
Right.
McClancy. So my mom said, you're going to McClancy, right? No ifs, ands, or buts. But it is. St. John's was, I was thinking Fordham, others, should I apply to Columbia? But I didn't know. I didn't have anybody
Right.
to tell me. I was an A student. I could have applied to Ivy Leagues. I could have gone to NYU, those places. I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming I would have gone in, but had I known or had somebody to show me the way. Right. Again, first gen on my mom's side, I'm the oldest grandchild. So I was the first to go through high school, first to think about college, the first to think about post-college, grad school. I didn't have anybody navigating this for me or counseling or coaching me. My mom worked as a secretary, and she worked at a consulting firm where the heads were a husband and wife. One was an engineer and a lawyer, and one was an architect and a lawyer. They did a lot of construction consulting. They loved my mom. My mom was key employee. So fortunately for me, they liked me, and so they helped me with figuring out college applications, writing recommendation letters, and they wrote for me because of my mom.
Yeah.
But that was the extent of like what did I know? My grandfather, my mom's dad, is a lawyer in the Dominican Republic. But again, my grandmother had separated from him in the late 40s, early 50s. Had separated, divorced him, left him behind in San Juan de la Maguana, and he was a procurador general, like an attorney general. So he was a bigwig, connected. You know, we had doctors, lawyers in the family in the Dominican side. Remember, on my dad's side, eran campesino. And when I say campesino, you know it, like farm animals, cutting grass, you know, chickens, roosters, pigs, things like that. And so there we had, but we didn't have anybody here. We didn't have anybody showing us the way. These are the possibilities. So I got to.
Where did your activist kind of passion start? Was it in undergrad or was it grad school?
No, undergrad, I think I was busy working.
Right.
I worked full time. I was going full-time student. My last 2 years, I did really well. Still single guy, going out, you know, partying, weekends, like going to clubs and dancing. Law school. When I got to law school, St. John's, it was culture shock. First day, you know, I had one suit. I had bought a suit. That was my one suit. I had like, you know, the John Travolta look, the Kiana, the fake silk and the colors. That was my suits in high school and college, is that we went out clubbing. Right. But I got my gray suit with the, you know, the yellow power tie. But St. John's, it was because the way I was treated. I was like invited to go to meet Balsa, Black American law students. They were the black students. There were only a handful of Latinas. When I say a handful, like 5 or 6. The president of Balsa my first year era Latina. I remember her name, Elisa Diaz. So she went out of her way to welcome me. There were a couple of others. But Balsa, again, the Latino students were invited, were always included in Balsa, but it was a black student group, I remember, from law school. So we started, again, you know, first year, doing that, thinking about, well, I'm Latino, I'm not black, you know, and doing this. I think I reached out to, is when I first learned of the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund, because I was trying to identify, I need to connect with Latino lawyers. And the oldest bar group then, and really the main one, was the Puerto Rican Bar in New York City, which is one of the oldest Latino bar groups. So I found out about a meeting. I met Manuel del Valle, who was then I think the chief ALJ at the State Division of Human Rights, taught at Fordham many years, still practicing down in Puerto Rico, Interamericana. So if you can ever get him up here, I keep in touch with him. So he was the first one, and like he opened doors, like mentored. I met Frank Torres, who was then a judge in family court, comes from a historic Puerto Rican family, like the first like electeds and lawyers and judges in the Bronx. I met Frank Torres as a St. John's alum. So I wrote him. He invited me to his chambers to meet with him. I met his law clerk at that time, Eduardo Padrón, you know, another icon in the Puerto Rican bar, the Puerto Rican legal community. So they kind of, those were the connections I made. And then Pearl Def. I met Luis de Graaf, who was then the director of education. Luis was a former young lord in the 60s, was a legal services Bed-Stuy Hebert fellow, you know, came in. He was like the one championing, like, you know, diversity, public interest stuff, things that, you know, didn't think about. He opened my eyes. Educated me. Like, you know, we started getting active in St. John's. What did we do? 2 things. One, we made Balsa. We decided there were too few Latinos, so we'll stay within Balsa, but it became BALLSA, Black and Latino Law Students. Balsa, right? So strengthened unity, right? And then the other thing, you know, we pushed for admissions, like, right? And we asked, like, well, it still took a while to get like a Latino law professor or faculty. We want more Latino students. So we pushed the administration. We got permission. We did a law day. We got St. John's to foot the bill, host a law day there. Through Pearl Def, I got connected, and Professor de Graaf, I call him professor because he ended up becoming a professor, one of the founding faculty members at CUNY Law School, was Pearl Def had what was called the Network of Latino Law Students. So these were all the Latino law students that had come through Pearl Def's pipeline pre-law programs, and, you know, stay united and connected. And they go to law schools in New York, the Northeast. And so I got involved in that group as a support network. So we got Pearl Def, the network. Professor de Graaf came, spoke, was the keynote at the law day. And, you know, again, it was this, you know, being put aside, I think being treated second-class status, you know, kind of like Puerto Rico is, right? You know, not full now.
Yeah, don't get me started on that.
Right. A subject for another day. But it was there really that I had an awakening. I pushed like balsa. I started again, which exists to this day, which is one of my proudest, I think, legacy moments. I created a program called Spanish Street Law, and it was like students would go. St. John's being Catholic university, we would partner with the Brooklyn Queens Diocese and go to parishes and do Know Your Rights on like basic legal topics. I got the bright idea. Well, Brooklyn Queens, there's all these Latino parishes, predominantly Latino immigrant parishioners. Let's do this in Spanish. And so we got permission. We did this. We worked with Brooklyn Queen. And this is, again, the connection with Pearl Deaf. Who supervised us was a legal fellow, a lawyer, Ed Camacho from Pearl Deaf. Because we're students. What the heck?
Right.
What the hell do we know? Right. We don't know. We're not supposed to be giving legal advice.
Right.
It's what did you do an outline, but we had a team within Balsa, 4 Latino students. We were the team for 2 years, and with Pearl Deaf supervision, we went to parishes in Brooklyn and Queens and did Know Your Rights, tenants' rights, housing, wills, consumer law, family law. So that was, again, my genesis as a community lawyer, educator, advocate, and also, again, I think, that empowerment, that activism, what the law can do and what we as lawyers and even as students, as law students, that we have this power, superpower afforded to us that we can go out there and impact our community, educate them, engage them, empower them. So what I'm proud of, I said this program ended up, it continued through my 2 years, my last 2 years at St. John's. I went back then, I was the attorney supervisor, died out. 10 years later, through Lourdes Ventura, now Judge Ventura, another icon, good friend, dear friend, who was then president of the Latino Lawyers of Queens, wanted during her presidency, we need to do a community engagement. So I said, well, I have this old program. So we partnered with St. John's. Then by that point, LALSA had its own group because there were enough Latino students. They had their own group. Racial affinity group. We partnered with them, and it became Street Law in Espanol. And St. John students partnered with members of Latino Lawyers of Queens, would go into the community, parishes, Queens Public Library, community groups, and do these Know Your Rights presentation in Spanish. I remember going to a church when we started up again, Our Lady of Sorrows, which was Lourdes' church, home parish in Corona, on a Sunday. Smart thing, right after the Spanish language mass. This is Corona, when I grew up, was an Italian neighborhood, became a Dominican neighborhood. Now in the 1990s, it is a Central American, Ecuadorian, Salvadorian, Mexican community there. Packed church. We had 200 people for our first workshop on tenants' rights.
Wow. That is awesome.
So, and the proud thing I can say is St. John's is still doing this program.
Amen.
I'm now the godfather emeritus, but I still have to pick
up. El
Padrino, yes. And I still, I nag sometimes. I call the students, what are you doing? We need to plan. Let's get to workshops. Like, they did one workshop last semester, and I was saying, guys, got to do more.
Sure.
And especially what we'll get to is, like, the climate in today's day and age. There's a lot of fear and misinformation, particularly within Latino immigrant communities. So we're planning something to talk about immigration, ICE enforcement, which is the hot topic right now.
Sure.
Fear. So they're working on this and still partnering with the Latino lawyers. So this is something, again, started in the mid-1980s, 40 years later, still going.
That's a lot to be proud of. I am so proud of you. And we oftentimes don't realize the impact that we have when we do things like that, because we touch lives and we just never hear back, right? You don't hear the direct feedback, but you do make a tremendous impact. And 40 years of impact in that particular program, as you said, you're so proud of it. We're proud of it for you. And now, it's coming full circle, right? Yeah. So Know Your Rights is something that's a hot topic, something you and I have discussed. Maybe we can collaborate and partner on here in Suffolk County, because it's definitely needed. But, most importantly, it just empowers people and gives people a sense of a little more control than what they think they have.
Yeah, there's an old commercial. Remember Sims, the clothing store, like, an educated consumer is our best customer.
Correct.
This is like, I was a legal aid lawyer for 10 years, represented clients. I was a community lawyer. I was a client-centered community-centric lawyer before there was such a term, community lawyering. But part of this was also going into the community and doing Know Your Rights, educating your clients about their rights. So before they had the landlord sued them, or before there were whatever XYZ issues, that they knew that they had legal rights. It didn't matter that they weren't born in New York. It didn't matter that they weren't citizens. It didn't matter that they didn't speak English, that they were Spanish monolingual or limited English proficient. They had rights, and so advising them and engaging them. So again, did I know this back when I was a law student? No. It was like a way to give back, a community program, and again, this impact that I had, and using my language skills. Again, fortunate that, again, even with mi español, right, doing that, and and at that point we got credit for it too at school, which was always a good thing.
Yeah, that credit is always necessary. So, once you graduated law school, you had this sense of fire, of activism, of community mindedness. You obviously had your eyes open to communities that maybe you weren't aware of, to networking circles that obviously had some influence and could assist you, mentor you, coach you. Talk to us about the different roles that you played in your early legal career.
All right. So again, my first job really out of law school was at the Queen's DA's office. Now, I had a business background. I didn't go to law school to be a prosecutor, did do criminal law.
How'd you get the job?
I was encouraged to apply. Balsa's faculty advisor was a guy by the name of Ed Hammock, African American. He had been the parole board chair under, I think, Mario Cuomo.
Okay.
So he was connected. He was a St. John's alum, was an adjunct faculty. He was the champion of the Black and Latino students. He's a lifelong prosecutor, government lawyer. He opened, again, the impact of mentors. He opened my eyes, and this is advice I pass on to students. Don't let folks pigeonhole you or stereotype you. Right. You're Latino, right? That doesn't mean you have to go work at legal aid or be a public defender. It doesn't mean you can only do legal services work. Why not be a prosecutor? Why not be an ADA, an assistant attorney? Go work at these prosecutorial offices where there is great power and there is often lack of diversity.
Correct.
So I started in Queens. Again, same thing. Remember that started at St. John's? Started in an office of 200. And Queens is one of the smaller, other than Staten Island, of the four major boroughs. I had like 200 plus 250 ADAs, 5 Latinos.
No.
5.
No.
5.
Are you kidding me?
Right. So we all got to know each other. Right? We hung.
Really? You had to.
Yeah, right. We all know who we were. And again, we banded together and just to support and solidarity. There was a St. John's guy, again, a friend from St. John's who was a year ahead of me, Billy Navas, ended up being still a lifelong friend. Mentor to me, and he was there. So he was showing me arraignments, criminal court. They had formal training, but having that personal touch. And so, but again, this is where, again, some of the pushback, we now have progressive DAs and policies, wasn't like that in the mid-'80s. When I started, it was John Santucci, if you remember, was involved in some of the Queens Dem corruption scandals.
Yep.
But, it was people would say, people selling a nickel bag or smoking a joint. Marijuana was possession, was illegal back then. I had classmates who came on just wet behind the ears, new lawyers, but came from different backgrounds. Well, this is serious stuff. I had family in El Barrio, Washington Heights. I grew up in Jackson Heights. Smoking a joint, selling a nickel bag is, are you kidding me? Right. I'd seen people doing heroin.
Correct.
But crack was, and starting them. But that was serious stuff. But that, I would take pleas on cases time served. Somebody's going to, what is he going to do? He's selling nickel bags. You're going to fine him or how's he going to pay a fine? He's going to go back out and sell more nickel bags. Right. That made no sense. But I got called into the carpet again because we did not have, like they do nowadays, I think prosecutors have a lot more discretion. So I quickly realized I wasn't totally comfortable. And I think the DA's office then was still very political. Like ADAs, we were still expected to campaign for Mr. Santucci.
Right.
That's his Dem side. That's his political side. We're an ADA. That's not within my job description, but we were still expected to support and go out. I transitioned early in my career to legal aid because I think that was my calling. And I really, again, solidified that, representing people using my legal skills as a staff lawyer. I represented juveniles in family court for a couple of years. That was, where I cut my teeth, being in court every day, trying all sorts of cases. And I found my niche. That was it. And so the other thing I go back, why I went to the DA's office was, one, that opportunity, but was, the ability to go to court early on. Learn how to call a witness, try a case, argue. I can get up talking to you here. I mean, we haven't seen each other in a while. We're talking like old buddies, right? But I mean, I've always said this is a skill. Not everybody, and not all lawyers can do this. Correct. We can get up, and I know you for many years. Like, again, I think you have the persona in this. So we can get up in any room and engage in conversation, and meet strangers, friends, and I'm comfortable. Yeah. I can do this. But there are some people like, oh my God, stage fright. I can't talk. I go in a room, network, and again, these are skills, interpersonal people skills, which particularly I would encourage like students, young lawyers, things you can do. Get off your phone or your whatever things. Talk to people. Especially now. Yeah, talk to people. Engage with them like verbally. Right. So I didn't know when I looked at your bio, I didn't know that you had a consumer frauds kind of chapter there. Yeah. So this is, I think I had been at legal aid for a number of years. I've been in Brooklyn 5 years. I took a leave 1 year to teach work at Hofstra Law School. I always wanted to be that clinical law. Now, I didn't want to be academic. That wasn't me. But I wanted to do clinical teaching and teaching lawyering skills. So I got this opportunity. Again, remember, I'm living in Manhattan, so I'm doing the reverse commute out to Hempstead. Almost not as bad as coming out here to Hauppauge. But, going there, I did the reverse commute, and I did a housing rights and disability. I loved it. I loved the teaching. And again, but this is Hofstra, so it's more suburban students, like, not really there. There were some New York City students of color who kind of got it, and I really enjoyed working with them. But, they would have renewed my contract, but I didn't want to do the commuting out to Long Island, so I went back to legal aid in the Harlem office, spent a couple years there. Then again, it was enough, 10 years at legal aid. It was time to go. Elliot Spitzer was the attorney general then. So this was an opportunity. Again, this is where politics sometimes come into play. The prior AG had been Vacco, was a Republican. So normally with Dem AGs, like people who worked at legal aid, legal services, had progressive liberal backgrounds, were welcome to the AG's office. It was a stepping stone to move up in the work that you were doing. Vacco, that got cut off, Republicans. Spitzer came in, to his credit, he hired very smart, hardworking people and let them run as attorney general. So I got that opportunity. I was tired of legal aid. Let me go to attorney general's office, and I learned a whole new practice, consumer frauds and protection. So I started as an assistant attorney general. Proud that one of the first investigations I did was with a good friend of ours, Roberto Lobrón, who's still at the AG's office. But like we started this thing, again, using our positions within government. He was then in the Harlem regional office. We started this immigrant consumer protection initiative to address what we call notario fraud or immigration services fraud. It was a new area, and we made the office we protect all residents, right? Even those who don't speak English or are immigrants. So we made the AG Consumer Frauds multilingual, the hotline, the complaint forms. We would go out and educate Latino immigrant communities and neighborhoods about their rights as consumers, kind of going back to the street law, like what is right? You have rights as a consumer. And we started delving into this area about immigration services fraud, notario fraud. And Roberto actually, I think, brought one of the first cases prosecuted in that. And I think the case was still going on, in its fifth cycle. But the guy didn't stop, kept trying to do the same thing. Never got the message, and he went to jail and paid fines. But, there's something called affinity fraud within our community. They say, I'm from your hometown, te hablo su idioma, su lenguaje, and, trust me. And they're not, you can't trust them. They're looking to take advantage. They're looking to take your hard-earned money and line their pocket. So God bless Roberto. He's still doing this. He's the head of the Harlem Regional Office. Maybe should invite him to come out here to be a future great guest. Candidate. Hopefully he'd come out to Suffolk County. That I don't know. He's telling me to go out to eat and up at a great Spanish restaurant in Connecticut. So if he's telling me to go to Stanford, he could come out to Long Island. Exactly. Okay, so Pearl Deaf.
Latino justice as we know it today. Talk to us about how you got your first role in that organization, or your first paid role, because you obviously had been involved.
Right. I had this connection. I first got connected in law school as a student. And again, this is for college students, younger people who are thinking about law, going to law school, becoming a lawyer. Check out Latino Justice's website. We have a CAP leadership. Cesar Perez, one of the 3 co-founders, named after him. Leadership. Still do some of the same pre-law, law day, law bound. We have a number of great programs to open doors, to get that assistance that I kind of navigated blindly. There are now programs and folks who are willing to help guide you, mentor you, support you on this effort. So again, going to Latino Justice, I was a Spitzer guy, 7 years. Spitzer guy, as we know, got elected governor.
Right.
I could have sought opportunity, but I had no interest in going to Albany.
Right.
And so Andrew Cuomo came in as Attorney General. Not good. Speaking plainly, I was a Spitzer guy. It was like, time to go. I cannot work for this man.
Right.
And so the opportunity, which was interesting, the legal director at PearlDef then joined Cuomo's staff.
Interesting.
I think Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. And so her position opened up. Now, I had always wanted to work at PearlDef. It was like a dream job. But like most nonprofits, the pay, the timing, civil rights, this.
And a few opportunities.
Right. Because it's just very small.
Correct.
But that opportunity opened, so I applied. I got hired by Cesar Perez, one of the who had come back again because PearlDef had some issues in funding and things. And actually post, I think like 2006, Cesar came back, restored PearlDef. And if you remember that time, 2006-07, is again the end of Bush II. This anti-immigrant, anti-Latino sentiment. I mean, we saw it out here in Long Island. The firebombing of a Latino home in Farmingville, hate crime, a violent assault against 2 Latino day laborers, jornaleros, in Farmingville in the early 2000s. So I mean, there's this. We know there's real racist, white supremacist type history here in Long Island, and particularly in Suffolk County.
Unfortunately.
We were doing this, and so the opportunity to come join, I got hired as the legal director. Again, I had done, criminal prosecution, I had done criminal defense, civil, housing, family law, legal aid. At the AG's office, I prosecuted consumer, civil. I also prosecuted a couple criminal cases, did litigation. But civil rights was this whole new thing, and the new area was immigrants' rights. Because remember, immigrants were being castigated. Lou Dobbs, Bill O'Reilly on the newswaves, like saying the Mexican illegal horde, they're to blame for taxes, high taxes.
Sounds familiar, right?
Right. That they're stealing our jobs. Right. They're illegal. Every Latino immigrant is an illegal from Mexico. Hello. If you're born in Puerto Rico, you're a citizen by birth. Again, a second-class citizen, but you're still a citizen by birth. And so the opportunity began working in some of the landmark cases. And over that time, as the legal director, I have participated in, led some landmark, major successful cases, which we can talk about. That, again, what I tell like students and young lawyers, we as lawyers are privileged. We have a degree, we have an obligation. Lawyers have always perceived we are upper echelon or whatever pillars of the society to give back, to lead. I firmly believe that. I mean, there's something called pro bono, giving back one way, and however you serve or do that. But that we have an opportunity, we have a special role, and we can use our skills, the skills that, what do we learn as lawyers? We learn how to use our brain, our mouth, how to speak, how to write, how to advocate on behalf of a client's interest and give them a voice. So what do? I give my clients a voice. Yeah. I'm their voice in the court or testifying at a legislative hearing or protesting why this is wrong, why this is illegal. And here we are doing this all over again.
Yes, indeed. We're going through... I can tell you that over the last weekend, I've gotten so many text messages and calls of so much anxiety for a community that is so valuable to this country and to just this region that helps in construction, in restaurants, in all kinds of areas of service in our community, and that pay taxes but get very little in return, right?
And Mark, good point. Pandemic. Who was on the front line? Who was still agricultural workers picking our food, our produce? Who were the healthcare workers, like in hospitals and health centers? Crisis responders. Who were they were immigrants. Those are the folks from our community who were sticking their neck out and being exposed and at great personal risk, and they did this. So I think, I concur 100%. Yeah. These are an indispensable part of our society, of our communities, and here we are again because the man sitting in the White House has a distorted view of reality.
Right. And it's going to negatively impact our economy.
Yeah.
So it will affect everyone, regardless of where they come from. And even during the pandemic, it disproportionately affected those people from those communities because they tend to live so many in one home and one apartment. So, they were disparately, impacted when it came to the effect of COVID and many of the deaths. So.
Right. And even that, we saw in immigration, a case that Latino Pearl did in 2007-8 when I started. There was something called home raids. And we see this, again, happening all over again. ICE had money in the budget, so they pulled ICE Immigration Customs pulled agents from all over the country and sent them out here to Long Island. And they partnered with both Nassau and Suffolk County Police Department, and they would do home raids, early morning paramilitary home raids. They had a warrant for, say, Juan Valdez, and it's an immigration warrant. It's an administrative warrant. It doesn't permit it's not a no-knock court order or forcible entry. You can only go into somebody's premises or private residence upon permission. They did these forceful entries. I'm looking for Juan Valdez. You're not Juan Valdez. Who are you?
Yeah,
Show me your name. If you
you
remember the pictures in Newsday and other newspapers, like all the particularly Latino men, many from Central America, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, were being handcuffed, chained, and what the program was called, Operation Return to Sender. This is like somebody's idea of a sick joke, but it was to do collateral arrest, drive up the numbers, and that's what we see this president doing now. I read something that he's imposing like quotas, like ICE field officers have to do X number of arrests. So we've already seen this reign of terror. I'm going out in Newark last week, if you heard right in the papers, that they went to a fish market in Newark, and the Ironbound, which is a Portuguese, immigrant community neighborhood, known for its restaurant, known for its seafood. They went to a fish market. They reportedly stopped only the Latino employees, the brown-skinned folks, asked them for ID. Even a Puerto Rican who was there is a U.S. military veteran, and they were questioning the authenticity of his documents, and fortunately let him go at some point. But again, this is the climate. This is what they're doing, this fear, this intimidation, this effort to, what they're looking, and this is Stephen Miller, the Trump advisor, self-deport. They're trying to create so much havoc and fear in immigrant communities that they want people to think to leave
voluntarily.
Yeah, they're trying to do that because there's no way they're going to be able to arrest, detain over 10, 11, 12 million people. They're going to try. They didn't do it the first time. They're not going to be able to do it this time. But they're trying to create this there. And something you said earlier, that right after the election, once Trump won, again, phones started coming in. Clients, I heard from immigration lawyer friends, I'm sure you have as well, and your legal, your firm, clients calling, like, what does this mean? Because we know immigrant families, many are in transit, in status, many mixed status families, right? What's going to happen to me? Am I at risk? And the answer right now, unfortunately, is that everybody ever. Even if you have legal permanent resident green card, or you have TPS, Trump temporary protected status, or you have DACA deferred action, you're at risk for getting pulled up, stopped, questioned, having your temporary permissions, things rescinded. They're looking for every excuse to detain and deport.
Well, so on a positive side, let's try to highlight if I put you on the spot right now and I asked you to highlight one of your greatest accomplishments at Latino Justice, one of your greatest successes in the last, say, 5 years or so, what would you say it was? And tell our audience what it was about.
Yeah. So I've been the lead lawyer in a number of cases. Probably I've cut back, being a little bit older now and as the legal director. So I don't know if it's within the last 5 years, but one case which may be of particular interest to your audience is Cesar Vargas. Young kid, his mom brought him over the Texas border from Mexico when he was 4 or 5 with his brothers, had some other relatives here. They moved to Brooklyn. Cesar grew up in Brooklyn. He went to James Madison High School, same high school as Senator Schumer. Graduated from St. Francis College and there. At that point, he was thinking about law school, found out He's undocumented. He didn't have a Social Security number. So, but he wanted to be a lawyer. He had a promise to his mom, I'm going to be a lawyer. Applied, got into, eventually, not the first time, he had to do a summer program at CUNY Law School. They had a special summer, like pipeline Clio program. Got in, graduated with honors at CUNY. He was like the research assistant for the dean of CUNY Law School at that point, Michelle Anderson. Graduates, takes the bar first time. As we know, the New York bar is one of the tougher ones, no short thing. CUNY had some challenges too, but again, with its grad Cesar pass, now comes the big question. He wants to apply for his bar admission, get his law license so he can practice as a lawyer. He's still a dreamer. He doesn't have his Social Security number. One of the first questions on the application, list your Social Security number and are you a U.S. citizen? So Cesar was with two guys, one in California, one in Florida. They are the co-founders in the probably 10 years ago, what was called the Dreamer Bar. And again, we know dreamers, students who came, were brought to this country at young ages. Their parents brought them. It's not like they made a choice to come here, grew up here. This is their country. This is their home. Said, we want to be lawyers. But Jose in Florida ended up having DACA, so he had that. Sergio did not have that option, was on a waiting list for to adjust status to get a visa. Cesar applied for DACA, but he wanted to be the test case. He says, no. So we applied, against the advice of counsel, he submitted his application, and he put in his application, I do not have a Social Security number because I'm a dreamer. I was brought to this country when I was this age. And he wanted, in their face. And that was kind of Cesar's style. He wanted to be open, notorious there. So naturally, you go through character and fitness when you do this.
Right.
Cesar was living then in Staten Island, so he met with somebody, Richmond County Bar. You're a dreamer. What's that, immigration? What does that mean? Had no clue or understanding. So she kind of kicked his application back to the Character and Fitness Committee. They convened a hearing. That's where Cesar really had come to Latino justice. And to me, I had met him as a student, although we differ on our initial meeting recollection at a public interest job fair. He accuses me of blowing him off, that I would not hire him as a student, and I have no recollection of that. But anyway, so Cesar
That's
came
a lawyer's
to me.
answer.
Yeah, exactly. And I have no independent recollection. But Cesar came to Latino Justice. Juan Cartagena was the president, and me, and said, I want you guys to represent me on my bar thing. This is the test case in New York. We're going to kick open the door. So we represented him. We did this hearing. Again, I had the Dean Anderson from, as a trial lawyer, you dream of the perfect witness. This was the dean of the law school. Anything, what is a dreamer? What is CUNY's position? What does the law school mean? Does somebody's immigration status, being a dreamer or DACA? Perfect, hit every answer. Again, I had actually, as a good lawyer does, you meet with your witness, you prep them. She knew the drill, she knew the story, she gave every right answer. I heard the committee that did the hearing was all Richmond County, Staten Island guys. So I had Cesar did a lot of volunteer work with a Mexican CBO in Port Richmond and Staten Island. I had the head of that organization come in, and he dropped every name, big name, church, political person in Staten Island. They got the message.
Very
Cesar,
strategic.
Right? This is thing. And then I had Cesar tell his story, and I had Cesar do his closing. And Cesar gave the best speech, impassioned speech. And ultimately, the Character and Fitness Committee wrote a 25-page opinion that Cesar fulfilled every requirement of character and fitness, but his immigration status they could not approve his application, and therefore they passed his application to the Appellate Division, Second Department. So now we're briefing in the Appellate Division, Second Department in Brooklyn, a beautiful courthouse where I was admitted many years ago. We're litigating this case. We filed a brief. Part of, again, the strategy as a lawyer, we were getting, everybody agreed with us, law school deans, bar associations. Yeah, it shouldn't matter that he's dreaming, whatever. He should be admitted. And we uncovered that there had been folks who were not citizens, were in deportation, but nobody understands immigration. Oh, you have a motion for cancellation. You're on verge of deportation or removal. They didn't understand. You got approved. But again, folks didn't want to come forward, and I get it. They didn't want to expose themselves, potential repercussions. So we had a fight. We got the New York Attorney General's office then. Schneiderman was the Attorney General. Kristen Clark, who just stepped down as Assistant Attorney General in charge of civil rights for the Department of Justice during the Biden era. She was the chief of civil rights at the AG's office. She saw what the story was at the AG's office. Barbara Underwood, who was the Solicitor General, who later became acting Attorney General when Schneiderman had to step down, they wrote a brief in support of Cesar. What happened then? Also, the Department of Justice, which was the Obama Department of Justice, but they had a strict line. They opposed Cesar's bar admission.
No,
yes,
I didn't know that.
Because remember, Department of Justice in all these cases, there's a federal immigration law, the
Right.
Personal Worker Responsibility Act, that states cannot confer benefits, and benefits include professional licenses, including law licenses,
right.
unless the state first takes legislative action
Right.
to authorize this
Correct.
class of people who have no legal status that they're eligible for a license. So California, Sergio Garcia's case was in the California Supreme Court. California being the progressive state, they passed the California DREAM Act authorizing DREAMer documented law graduates to be eligible. Not documented, but just undocumented. So Sergio got admitted. Florida, surprisingly, Florida under Governor Scott championed the Florida State DREAM Act. A little more strict, but they permitted documented law graduates to be eligible. New York, if you recall back then, the Senate was Republican, the Assembly was Dem. Cuomo was the governor, was 3 men in a room, was dysfunction. There were different bills in the Assembly and the Senate. You could not get everybody in the room to agree, even though everybody agreed this was a good thing. So we had to get the AG on board. The Department of Justice took the position because New York had not passed or done anything that they had to oppose. The court wrote a great opinion, a precedential opinion, which I'm the lead lawyer, and Cesar is there. But basically, that one court, judiciary, is an equal branch of government. Remember, we have an executive, legislature, and there for lawyer licensing, to the extent, is governed by the judiciary. It is a equal branch of government. They do not require state legislative action, basically telling the federal government, F you. We don't need permission from the state legislature. We determine who's eligible and who fulfills character and fitness. So point one, that was one of the points argued. So thank you also for the Attorney General for their support on that. The second part was that dreamers and people with DACA have good moral character. They can fulfill character and fitness. That does not mean that they are unfit or that they are criminals. And so that language is critical. So eventually that decision came out. Phone is ringing off the hook. I get a call from the clerk of the second department. The court wants to schedule Cesar's admission. Does he have all his paperwork in? Whatever. Call Cesar, find out. Oops. Cesar had gone to a protest in Kansas of the Republican presidential candidates, invite only, with other dreamers. And again, Governor Perry, the guy from Texas, was there, Governor Christie from New Jersey, all the Republican wannabes. And Cesar, the dreamer students protested, disrupted the assembly, and Cesar got up to, like, I think it was Christie or Perry, would you deport my mom? Cesar's mom was undocumented. Would you deport my mom? After like 20 years, 30 years in this country. So they arrested Cesar. He charged him with criminal trespass. And he had that hanging over his head. Can't get admitted if you have a criminal arrest and case pending. So he had to get that thing in Kansas taken care of.
Right.
He ended up taking a plea, adjourned, on probation for 6 months. After 6 months, they did it. Soon as it was done in January, we got the decision in June. By the end of the year, his 6 months was over. The criminal case was closed, went right back. He got sworn in early February in the appellate division. We had the dean of the law school, Juan Cartagena, myself, Cesar's we got special permission because you only get 2 tickets, Cesar's entire family, and most importantly, his mom was there to witness him taking that oath. And as a lawyer, there is something called the oath book. Not only do you take the oath, you have to sign. And so Cesar and his mom were crying. And for me as a lawyer, that I fulfilled my duty to my client. I enabled him to fulfill the promise to his mom of becoming a lawyer, a licensed lawyer.
Right.
So to me, that's what is possible in the world.
Right.
Anything.
Anything.
And I give full credit to Cesar. I mean, he was not the easiest client, and we can joke now, banter again when we first met or whatever, and he didn't always listen to counsel because I would say, Cesar, you can't say, tone down your social media. When you're before character and fitness, it's the game. You got to play by the rules, and you want to show this. Once you're admitted, you want to engage in civil disobedience, you want to protest, you can say whatever, but you got your law license. It's going to be a lot harder to take it away versus getting it.
Correct.
But Cesar, I this is where I say I respect and admire him. He's a man of conviction. He has firm beliefs. He wanted to kick the door open. Man, he kicked that door open, and he opened the door. So through him, there have been a number of folks who've come in. I know here in New York, I have become known as a guru of this. I have worked on bar admission cases for documented or undocumented law graduates in New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Texas, Illinois, Utah, and state of Washington and Idaho. That I've worked and met students that have gone this, and we've kicked open the doors and got states, Supreme Courts, whatever, to rewrite the rules about what character and fitness means.
Outstanding. And to know that you're a part of history that will go on long before we're here, you will be remembered and you will have had an impact on the history of law in so many different ways. And that's a beautiful, beautiful heritage that you have. So talk to our audience about Latino justice. What do you need most of all, besides donations, of course, as a 501c3, as an advocate for so many in the civil rights arena? Funding is always critical, but more importantly, where can people kind of get involved? What types of events are you having for students and others? I know you're very passionate about giving back to the pipeline of talent that are coming up, to go to law school and all of those things.
Yeah. So again, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, so funding is there. I mean, we get major, philanthropy, Ford Foundation, but individual donors are critical, particularly in anybody and within the legal community. Pro bono work, again, big law firms. We often, I have now about 15 lawyers, the biggest legal staff that we've had in the history of the organization. But we can't do all the work that we're doing and that we want to continue to do, and even the necessity of more work that we need to do now without partners at big law firms. So even writing a check, doing pro bono, helping out is critical. In terms of the other part of it is, given the rhetoric, that's coming out of elected officials, out of partisan political pedagogy, speak out. Jose is out there. I'm on the front lines. I'm protesting. I don't give a damn anymore. What are you going to we said this, right? What are you going to do to me?
Right.
I've been practicing 40 years. What are you going to do to me? But it has to be other people stepping up. If there's an injustice, if there's an indignity, if there's a violation of rights, you have to speak up. You have to stand up. And because folks right now, particularly in immigrant communities, are in fear, are being terrorized. And they can't come out and speak up or take steps. Some of the clients we represent, and I've had this over the years, to me, they're guerreras. They are, they fight. They want to be a voice. They want to be a beacon because they don't want others to have to suffer or suffer the indignities or had their rights violated in a bridge like they did. So they stand up. Right. We need people like that. You need to stand up. And I get it. There's a lot of fear. So that's the thing. In terms of the pipeline, check out Latino Justice, our Cesar A. Perales CAP Leadership Institute. We have a webpage on Latino Justice's website. We have a lot of great programs. If you don't want to fund lawyers, you don't want to fund litigation, fund CAP. Fund this pipeline. It's a leadership development. It's developing the next generation of leaders. And ideally, most go to law school, but not everybody's going to go to law school, and you don't have to have a law degree or JD degree. You can go for grad school or master's or MPA or what have you. But
that I didn't know. I didn't know that you didn't have to pursue a JD. You could actually
most
go
of our
through
programs
the program.
are geared to that, but part of it is leadership.
Right, and, that's awesome.
To become an advocate. You don't need a often lawyers do become legislative, work in legislative council in Congress in Albany, but it's having those skills, utilizing, developing that, and policies. And so we've evolved. Again, it's just not being law. Yes, law is the vehicle, and law school is the thing, but not exclusively. So there's ways to do this. We have programs. Again, we do Law Day in the fall. We just finished what we call Lawbound, free 1-week boot camp. Everything you need to know how to successfully apply to law school. The next one will be in the summertime in August. We start advertising there. We have a mentorship program, Next Generation Líderes, NGL, for high school juniors and seniors, college students, and recent grads who are interested in going to law school. We host monthly webinars. Maybe we got to get you to come on to serve on the legal career panel. Again, the interesting career path that you've had. Share that. There's no right way. There's no traditional way. What your major is, where you go to school, what you practice. That law degree, again, will open up so many different doors for you. And so is to have folks come in and do that and learn this, and getting an attorney as a mentor. And then, this is the pipeline. I oversee the legal department again. I'm hiring law students to come intern with us. So I'm hoping to develop the next generation. I'm not naive that everybody's going to do civil rights. I'm not naive that everybody's going to do public interest. I hope they do. But even if you go work at a big law firm, you got student loans to pay. You got to support a family. Write a check. Do pro bono. There's always a way to give back.
Right. Awesome. And where can our viewers find Latino Justice? What are your social media sites? What's your website?
Okay, so www.latinojustice.org. We're on. We have Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. What's the new one? Blue Sky. We're on Blue Sky. We got off of X. That given its racist direction, we're off Twitter or whatever.
Right.
But we're on Blue Sky now. We do have a great digital media, social media presence. Look us up. Go to our website. We have a monthly e-newsletter called Latino Justice Brief, so it gives you highlights. Or follow us, like us on LinkedIn, Facebook. Blue Sky, and you'll get, the updates. And connect with us. Let us know. If you're a college student, a high school student, college student, you're thinking about law school, I answer those emails. I get some of those calls, and I'm always happy to meet. Because I remember, like, Luis de Graaf and Judge Padrón and Judge Torres and Manuel de Valle taking the time to speak with me. They didn't know me.
Right.
I was a young Latino law student at St. John.
Right.
Blah. And, they took time and helped guide me and coach me.
Well, and there's so many more of us, right? In different industries and in different professions, and you have so many more Hispanic judges and Hispanic AGs and all kinds of different areas of practice, and Hispanics in nonprofits and Hispanics doing community-based work that have the law background and have the capacity now to kind of look at it with that legal lens, right? And be able to analyze and partner and collaborate with Latino Justice and with the community-based organization and provide information and educate and inform our elected officials and all of those things.
So I'm going to give one last example. I was invited to speak on a panel. This New York City Commission on Human Rights did a full-day conference, Human Rights, their annual conference. They did a panel on immigrants' rights. The panel got moderated by their newly appointed Assistant Commissioner for Law Enforcement, a Latina lawyer who was recently there. This person is a CUNY Law School grad, is a former legal intern of mine. So young, dynamic. One of the other speakers there was a policy counsel at the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, Lorena, who is also Pace Law grad, former legal intern. So they both, I felt I was on this panel with two young, dynamic Latina lawyers, leaders in the Commission on Human Rights and the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. And man, I was so proud. Proud. They're there speaking, and I speak again. I was truth. I called out the mayor. Mayor, stop playing footsie with with immigration and with the president. You got to protect. There's a executive order and confidentiality here. And they knew what they were getting when they had me on this panel. So I spoke truth, but. Again, the thing is, I said my legacy, I did my job. I did well. Because I had two young outstanding Latina lawyers, Stephanie and Lorena. God bless.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's up to them. It's up to this next young generation.
Sure. So we're passing the baton and we're partnering, collaborating. Iron sharpens iron. You've sharpened me, and hopefully you've had a tremendous impact here today. I'm certain of it. But it's amazing how giving you are, and how there are so many others like you and like me that are looking to serve and looking to mentor and looking to coach and looking to provide, a little bit of wisdom, advice, or trying to tell folks how to avoid some minefields, right?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we started with, culture and family.
Right.
These are values thank my mom again that instilled in me these values of giving back, of being a responsible family, and that's always been my mantra, my guiding light. And so it goes back to that in culture, and that's, I think, we as Latinos, and particularly that we give, we nurture, we support.
Right, and that's what it comes down to. We have more things in common than we have differences. Even with our non-Latino friends, it becomes a sense of community, a sense of country, a sense of commitment to all of us, because we're all connected in some way or another. So I want to thank you, Jose, for being my friend, for inspiring me, for all of the great work that you've done, groundbreaking work, the historical impact that you've had. I want to let you know that I consider you to be my family. But for the champion circle, you are now part of our chosen family. You are a true champion. And I ask that you just say a couple of closing remarks to those viewers that are out here today that are perhaps maybe a little nervous about the environment that we're in, or that are perhaps young people that are considering or contemplating, going into some sort of law or legal related field. What would you tell my viewers?
Yeah, so those, again, for folks who are, again, we know many Latino immigrant families are mixed status. You're a citizen, or you're a naturalized citizen, or you have legal permanent residency, speak out. Look out for those in your family and your community who are not. Give them the support and backing. Students, again, even you as students, we came a long way. Remember, DACA, deferred action, was because of the dreamers. Young students, immigrant students, college students who protested, took to the streets. The White House heard it, and an executive order was created creating DACA. It's under attack now in the courts, but that's another story. But that is the power of unity, of collectivism. I would share, thank you, Mark, for inviting me out here and inviting me. Somos, what I would say, family, somos hermanos. We're brothers,
yes.
Right? That's and being part of the Champion Circle. I'll make a quick plug. Tango Restaurant in Central Islip. Mark and I are going to celebrate his 60th birthday there.
Right. That's right.
There, a great Argentine steakhouse here in Central Islip in Long Island. Family-owned business, and that's my plug for them. And I look forward to breaking further bread with you, my brother.
Indeed. I look forward to collaborating for this community, for our viewers, to bring us a little sense of peace and understanding and empowerment. So thank you again. On behalf of Liga de Justicia Abogados, on behalf of Liga de Justicia Foundation, we thank Jose Perez, the current Deputy General Counsel of Latino Justice, for his sharing of his story today. We hope that you found it to be truly extraordinary, as it was, and it inspires you or someone in your family. We encourage you to share, subscribe, and like, and in particular, watch our podcast, because we're going to highlight amazing people just like Jose each and every week. And so we thank Jose Perez, and we ask you to stay tuned. Take care.